Ever dated a woman whose chaos felt like emotional warfare?
Man does not have access to their emotions. They wonder why she's throwing plates across the kitchen.
In this episode, Enneagram expert Tamra Sattler reveals why nice guys get hooked on toxic BPD tendencies.
I can't believe how many men are so willing after 25 years of marriage. Some of us women, we're done.
Hear shocking stories and discover why these men stay, even as their lives crumble.
The guy kind of sheepishly walks in, cowers with his shoulders kind of curled over, and then the woman is just like, I am freaking leaving this person.
Every man dating a hot mess needs to hear this.
90% of the guy that I'm dating off the app has had a BPDX.
Have you ever wondered what masculinity even is in the modern era? Are you ready to move beyond the macho bully or the soy boy archetypes? I'm Marc Azoulay, and this is the Men's Therapy Podcast. Together, we'll explore how neuroscience, Jungian psychology, and Buddhist philosophy can transform your life, your marriage, and your business. Are you ready to deep dive into the minds of men? Let's begin. Hello, welcome back to the Men's Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Marc Azoulay, and I'm here with returning guest and friend of the pod, Tamra Sattler. She is an expert in working with people that are Enneagram Type 4 or individuals diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. She recently released a book called Too Much and Not Enough, which talks about this kind of grouping and this kind of way of being in the world, and helps people to really come to some understanding about how their psyche is working. But today we're going to flip it on the head, and we're going to talk about men who date individuals that tend to have BPD tendencies. Tamra, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be back on.
Yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation because it is our number one most requested topic over and over again. Almost all the emails we get about this podcast is people asking about relationships, and specifically about toxic relationships. They're saying, hey, I'm in a relationship. Is it toxic? Is really the question, right? They often give me examples and details. And, being a psychologist, and I look at it and I say, hey, maybe there's some personality disorder here. Maybe there's some BPD operating here. Maybe there's some narcissism operating here. It seems to be really, really common. Is that the same thing that you see out there in the world?
So common. And I'm also a couples therapist. So there are many times where I get a couple that comes in. The mostly female is obviously a type 4, which I can clarify a little bit, and then to the extreme borderline personality disorder. And the man typically does not have access to their emotions, tends to be a little more avoidant, super bright usually, sometimes a little Asperger's, cannot hold their intensity very well. And so then you get the perfect storm. They come in, they wonder why she's throwing plates across the kitchen. And that's where the work begins. That's where I really have to, role play, model, allow the female to use my nervous system, teach the man. But if we can go back, can we just redefine type 4 and borderline, I'm calling it style personality?
Yeah, let's start with there, because, and I also want to say, I'm excited for this conversation because I think every single woman before Caroline, the woman who I eventually married, that I dated was a type 4, 100%. And maybe a little bit borderline style. I won't diagnose my exes, but somewhere on that spectrum. So I know this intimately. But yes, go ahead, please. Educate the listeners on what Enneagram Type 4 looks like.
Okay, so I've worked with borderline personality disorder for probably about 15 years. So it's the full spectrum. So Enneagram Type 4 is kind of more of just the full spectrum. So what that means is, so to the healthiest, it's a person who's creative, vibrant, emotional, but not too much, intuitive, sensitive. At their very worst, and it's a personality disorder study done by Stanford, it is borderline personality disorder, which is dramatic, self-sabotaging, emotions that have run wild, volatile, rage, psychosis and neurosis playing together. So in the full range, when I get couples that come in, it can be all the way to, the healthiest, the healthiest to the not healthiest. So dealing with the full range. And I would say about 75% of these type 4s and borderlines are females. So we're getting the gender of female, and then they're either married to or partnered with a male. And so, does that explain it well enough of the flavor? And I myself am a type 4, so I can speak from the inside. And I've also had dramatic relationships, especially in my earlier years. It's getting better. But so does that give you a flavor of the personality structure?
It does. Yeah. And I think just to put some kind of common vernacular on it, the way I look at it, it's kind of the hot mess person, right? The person that they're often very attractive, they're hypersexual, they're hyper emotional, they're very creative, they're often artsy, but then they struggle kind of with organization, sometimes with functioning. It can be like a high passion, high drama relationship that has really high highs and really low lows.
Absolutely. And then, the male walks in, and after the first, couple months, he's wondering what, after the sex is settled and, they're possibly living together, he wonders what happened to his life and what's happening to him.
Yeah. Well, so let's kind of start from the beginning, right? What are some of the initial attractors that get guys into relationships with these type 4 individuals? What's the initial kind of pull,
Yeah. So I think the emotion. So when a man is not connected fully to his emotion, to his vibrancy, to his sensation, in walks this, typically, most of them are very attractive, these type 4 and borderlines. I mean, you can't really get away with being wildly dramatic and having rage outbursts when you're not attractive. So typically the guy walks in and he's just, really mesmerized by this ultra feeling feminine individual who also is really leaned into him sexually for validation, at least at the beginning. So that's kind of the pull. A lot of times these men have had intrusive mothers, volatile home lives. So, the big question is, and I know I'm jumping forward for a second, but how much work has this man done when he has the initial, bliss of this relationship?
Yeah, I really want to highlight what you said there of the intense feeling. A lot of the guys that I work with, I think a lot of men in general are pretty numb to the world. We have a very small aperture of feeling. We don't have high highs, but we also don't have low lows. And I think we're very protected. So I can see from my personal experience and many of my clients, when you meet a woman that is just so full of feeling, it makes us feel alive in ways that we really hadn't up until that point. And for many guys, a relationship and sex being a huge component is the place where we feel the most alive. So I think that there is a pretty intense pull, especially like you said, for guys that haven't done a lot of work and are still in that very kind of narrow bandwidth of just experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said. And I wanted to add also, the female is also highly authentic and validating herself, because that's what she most needs. So the guy just feels, just just so amazing with her. Just so amazing.
Yeah. So I wonder if you could explain for the audience, with BPD specifically, there's kind of this good object, bad object thing, right? Where either you are the perfect partner or you are the devil incarnate. And it can switch, and we'll get to the switch, but can you start with kind of the beginning, the good object, the idealization? What is that like from the inside, from the type 4's perspective, to have somebody that idealized?
Right. So again, at the more identified end, which is the more BPD end, not the healthy end, there is a sense of not having a self. So as a 4 and, BPD style, there's a sense that you're not grounded. You have a very ethereal sense of self that can be, molded and scripted, and you can be kind of anything for anyone. So that's sort of that's like the feeling. And then someone comes in, and in kind of psychodynamic terms, they're the good mother. Like, oh, they're going to be the one who stays. They're going to be the one who can handle my rage. They're going to be the one who will get me, who will meet me. Just such a setup for the fall. So idealization, all the things. And I project my full self onto this man, this newcomer. And it's got the, it's got the save me quality. I'm a damsel in distress. It's got, all the characters, from fairy tales. And you're going to save little old me, and you're the greatest, and you're the biggest, and you're the bestest, and you're all this. And so that's the projection. And then projective identification, as we know from psychoanalytic, psychodynamic term, is, and then I'm going to make you hold that. So you get to hold all of that. And at some point, it's going to be a little too much for you to hold.
Yeah, I think it is a setup, like you said. And for a lot of guys, we want that. As you're saying that, right? There's like this preening thing, right? Where it's like, you want to be the best and the strongest and the one that saves, especially if they're attractive, right? I mean, a lot of men want to be that hero and that knight in shining armor. But like you said, it's a setup for a fall. And it's also like a one-way relationship, right? Because in that setup, the man's needs are not important, right? It's really all about the female partner's needs.
Yeah, completely. And then, having dated enough myself, you don't even know the man's needs for the first, 6 months at least. They don't have needs, at least in my experience. So then it's perfect. I get to project all my needs onto this amazing man who's just so incredibly healthy, I assume. He has no needs. He's just being, so great. And then, at about sometimes earlier than 6 months, the masks come off for both of us. And that's when the real relationship starts. And they come into therapy, sometimes years later, 20 years later. So you really have to pick up the pieces of a lot of hurt, a lot of disappointment.
Yeah, I like that you brought that up too. We'll talk more about the man's experience, because I don't want to demonize the type 4 BPD style individuals, right? Like, they have their own trauma and their own kind of way of organizing. And I think what you said, I just want to highlight to our listeners out there. It's like, as men, the hope is that we can express our needs earlier, because I think that's 100% true, right? I mean, we're just spitting game, right? I mean, we're just like on our best behavior. We're hiding almost all of our imperfections. We're trying to impress the person that we're dating, usually financially or by giving them experiences or whatever it is. But it's not authentic. I mean, I think there is some level of that you need, because you got to stand out, especially in the modern dating scene. There's just a lot of people out there. But it does create another setup, I think, on the man's end of not getting their needs met, because we didn't say we had any, for, like you said, the first 6 months of relationship.
Exactly. Absolutely. Agreed. Yeah, I would love more men to be authentic from the beginning. And having, treated so many female borderlines, including to this day, their dating histories, the man's stoic, and then, when the shit hits the fan, they usually just bolt. A lot of them don't hang in there. At the first sign of, oh my goodness, words that are really hard for me to hear, she's crazy. Oh, really? She's crazy? Well, maybe you're not crazy enough, or maybe you don't have enough feeling, or so it just starts getting played out. The real relational dynamics and the real stuff.
If you're enjoying the podcast so far, please hit the subscribe button and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us to reach more men and inspire them to become the best versions of themselves. Thank you for your support. And now back to the show.
You know, as for me, as a recovering nice guy, and nice guy for our listeners, we talk about a lot on the show, but like, you know, as a people pleasing in men, basically, right? And like martyring and trying to like put all our needs in the side, right? So that we feel validated by filling up somebody else's cup, often our female partners, because we think we get rewarded with sex or validation, or we get to walk in with the hot, you know, person on our arm, right? Like we're getting these kind of secondary gains. Do you see, Tamra, that the nice guys and the borderlines, or nice guys and the type 4s tend to pair off? Because for me, it seems like a perfect match made in heaven. You know?
Yeah. So probably the avoidant nice guy, you know, the avoidant nice guy. Let's see what other, not in touch with his feelings. Yes. And then there's this whole other strain where a lot of psychologists say narcissists and borderlines, but I would say more the covert narcissist. The guy who can stay on the phone for hours, I've had them. Tell me more, Tamra. Tell me more. Tell me more. I mean, talk about a recipe for, you know, a fall. So probably many different types, but there's definitely of the, when I was sitting and thinking about this podcast, of the 3 couples that come to mind, mega nice guys, you know, the pillar of their families. However, when the woman is saying like, hey, I'm going to yoga, I'm off to the store, I'm doing this and that, most of the time the guy doesn't look her in the eye and say, wow, have a great day, can't wait till you get back. He's hiding because, you know, this is after years of marriage. He's hiding because he doesn't know what's going to happen when she gets back. And so, a thing that I was also thinking about is, can the guy be in his own therapy? Can the guy really understand what system he's in, whether she's healthy or super not healthy? And can he lean the frick in before he makes a decision to leave the marriage, leave the kids? You know, can he lean in and understand the system? Can he read the books? Can he tell the truth to the therapist? Can he tell the truth to his wife? Most of these men, they're not telling any truth. They're basically eating their feelings and their words, and they're allowing the couples therapist to work on them for the female. So what about working the system?
Yeah.
I think it's just so important.
I think it's critical. And I think that's the nice guy thing, is there's a lot of dishonesty in there, and there's a lot of repression of our own needs and feelings, because either we want to make our partner feel good because that's how we get filled up, or because we're afraid of them, kind of like you said, right? That we're walking on eggshells of like saying or doing the wrong thing, often because of, you know, childhood trauma or conditioning or whatever, right? Like, so I definitely see that. You know, I'm curious for you, like, you know, how can a guy know if they need to go to therapy around this, right? Like, what are some symptoms or some red flags for them to start to do the work? Because of course on this show, we're all about guys doing their own therapy, right? I mean, so many, they get kind of ultimatumed by their partner or by their family to do therapy, but it's so much better if you do it of your own volition, you know?
Yeah, well, I'm a little biased, and I think all of us need therapy, like everyone. I hope that, you know, people, you know, all walks can have therapy. However, I think a tip off for a man is, wow, I can't really handle the love of my life's intensity. Wow, I can't really handle her. Or I'm scared. Or I'm leaning out, I'm not leaning in. Why not go to therapy? Also, and I want to say this to couples therapists out there, can we really call it in session? Do we have to be the passive, well-liked therapist? I'm remembering one time where I actually really got assertive to this female and just stop Stop treating your partner like this. Just stop. And then, of course, he came to her rescue, which is really interesting. But yeah, can the couples therapist call it out? Like, listen, both of you need therapy. We have a characteristic happening here, a psychic structure of, you can name it type 4. It's a little bit lighter, or you can name it, highly volatile or sensitive, the HSP. It's up to us to name it. Or when you split the couple, some couples therapy allow you to split the couple and see the man and then the woman. Can we name it in those times that we have the man aside? Like, dude, what are you doing? Like, do you know what's happening here? Can you read a couple books?
Yeah, I wish more therapists were direct, especially with our male clients, right? Like, I think we're so passive and we're trained to be just like validating. And I think that's why a lot of men bounce off of therapy, is because I think men in particular like crave a clear mirror. We need that direct feedback because we don't get that a lot in our life, often because of privilege, right? But like, we don't get that clear feedback. So it's great that you're out there advocating to just be like, hey, this is what it is. This is reality as I see it. What are you going to do about it? There's something very courageous about that way of practicing.
Yeah, I have more men now. I switched to kind of the person who dates. It's interesting, who dates this type of woman. And not too long ago, a man, very successful, really nice looking, was doing his work. I just said, what are you doing with this lady? You really think she's enough for you? Do you really think so? Anyway, he broke up with her and basically landed his life partner weeks later. And now, we're doing the work again so that he can stay. He found a worthy woman for him. And so now, can he stay? Or is he going to be up to his old tricks again? So I get pretty honest with these people.
Yeah, I think it's a real gift. And I think, like I said, a lot of men need that because we don't get that in our lives. And I think we are really good at hiding, but we're hiding by like projecting confidence, right? And projecting that we have everything figured out and projecting that stoic viewpoint that you were talking about. That's how we hide.
Yeah, and the willingness. Like, I can't believe how many men are so willing after 25 years of marriage. Like, I really appreciate you all, like, that you just stay in there, sometimes passively, but you're staying in there for the kids, for the family unit, which is some of us women, when we're done, we're done. So yeah, I've also watched that. And then you have to pull the woman back to re-engage.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I think for men, it's, for better or for worse, we're very cognitive. So the idea of the family and the duty and the commitment is stronger than the actual feelings that we have towards our partner a lot of the time, especially if it is somebody that hasn't done a lot of self-work and isn't in touch with their feeling state, right? It's kind of that oath and that promise that we made. Versus I think women tend to be more emotional. So when the emotions run out, it's like, why am I here? It feels bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we feel vacant again or, dropped or dismissed.
Yeah. Well, so let me bring you back kind of the narrative that we were weaving. You talked about how, it's a mask for 6 months, right? And then it gets real. So can you talk about that moment? What happens when it starts to get real, when the masks come down?
Yes. And, a lot of couples therapists will quote about 6 months. They call it the honeymoon phase. I think for a lot of fours, BPD style, the disappointment sets in. Wow, he's not taking me to dinner once a week. The flowers aren't coming anymore. So then I start withholding sex and intimacy. And then suddenly I'm not validating anymore. And he's having a harder time at work. And suddenly he doesn't want to see me as much because he's afraid. So it just starts, so he starts pulling away, maybe not literally, but maybe, metaphorically starts pulling away. And then I start getting more anxious, more disappointed. My rage starts to, come online a little bit. And suddenly he's starting to get devalued. And then I start telling him, because I'm authentic as a 4, wow, you're not meeting me. Where's the flowers? Where's the dinners? Oh, you didn't get that promotion at work. Oh, I don't like your sweater. Why I used to love your hair long. So it just actually it kind of brings me back to both my clients and my own history of, from our side, can we give the man a freaking break? And then tables turn to the guy. What if the guy said, hey, what's happening? Sit down. I really want to listen. How many guys say, tell me more? How many?
Not enough.
When they're getting blasted. How many guys say, I've got all night to listen to you? 1? Maybe. I don't know. So, yeah, so that's what starts happening. And then the collective female rage comes in, and then you're going to be castrated soon enough.
Yeah. I mean, I think the male responsibility in this is twofold. I'm curious what you think, right? One, I think is what you're talking about, right? I think it is very masculine as far as like penetrating energy, literally, right? To like try to cut to the core of what's going on, right? And for those guys out there, you can just say something of like, hey, I know this is about the flowers. What is really going on, right? Just like kind of try to go like a level deeper. Or like, hey, how do you really feel? Hey, you're right. I didn't schedule dinner this week, but I feel like there's maybe more going on, right? Like, tell me about that. And I think that's very masculine because it cuts through the bullshit, right? It just gets to that deeper level and doesn't make the fight about who did the dishes and who didn't. Because we all know it's not about that, right? We know there's always something deeper happening.
And as you said that, Mark, like you said it with conviction, and like then I can lean into a little bit. But a lot of the men, you can't lean into. They haven't developed their masculine power. So I'm leaning into something flimsy, a guy who's just walked out of the room, who can't just say, basically, you don't scare me, Missy. You don't scare me at all.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yell for a little while longer, and when you're done, sit down and let's talk. What's going on?
Yeah. And I think all women need that. I mean, I think all feminine individuals, right, to make it more, acceptance. Like, I think the feminine is wild, and that's why it's beautiful, but it needs containment, and it really relaxes when it's contained. It likes that, We
do. Yeah. Use your cognitive powers and hopefully, bring the cognition into your body and just hold us for a second. Like really hold us, with your words, with your energy, with your body. And that's when I think men might need some help, to be honest.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because I think we're afraid of emotions, right? Because male emotions are very violent. I mean, men commit suicide way more than women, right? Men have more domestic violence instances than women. Like, our emotions are scary to a lot of us, right? Because they can literally result in violence. So I think when we see emotion at all, we just want to shut it down, which is not, courageous, right? I mean, it's running away. Or we just try to fix the emotion instead of hold the emotion. So if your partner's like, hey, you didn't buy me flowers and I'm upset, you'll be like, fine, whatever, I'll go buy you flowers tomorrow, right? But you're missing the whole narrative. You're missing all the stuff underneath that. It's not about just like throwing money at the problem, like your person is upset and is maybe lonely or jealous or, misses you or whatever, right? There's 10,000 things that could be going on that gets missed. And, I'll just say from experience, like if you buy the flowers the day after, they're also not going to work, right? Because you already missed the window.
I know. And that's where I said before, can you lean in? Can you get close? Can you get close? And again, that doesn't mean forever. Can you get close for now? And if this woman cannot stop raging, then you have to do something. You can still have boundaries and get closer, right? And you can still have rules or protocol to say, okay, I can't handle more than 5 minutes of yelling at the top of your lungs. But I'm here. I'm leaned in. I'm getting close. What do you want me to know? How many women who are this type hear that? Very few. Very few. And I just have a little, I don't know if this is relevant, but I have a TV personal. So I have a very close male friend who's a therapist, very deep individual. And we had a little bit of a rupture. And I had I had some intensity. So guess who tells me he doesn't have capacity right now for me? Excuse me? We've been friends for years. You don't have capacity for me. Okay, cool. Thank you. So this is a pretty well-developed male. Well, maybe. But I'm already feeling my rage, my sadness. Like, where am I? Can you at least bring me into the conversation a little bit instead of now, you can't talk to me until you're ready? Totally the same dynamic. We're not romantic partners, but I can feel it. Right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
relevant. It's here.
Yeah, well, and I think I think there's a key difference between men and women, or masculine and feminine individuals, right? Where I think the feminine wants to be loved for all of it, right? They want love in the rage, they want love in their sadness, they want love in their grief, and they also want love in their joy and their sexuality and their laughter and their play. They want love everywhere. Whereas I think the masculine really just wants to be happy all the time. Like, we don't actually want the negative emotions, right? Like, we just want we want to maximize positive emotions. And I think for men, it's so important to know that is like, for your feminine partners, these emotions like anger and grief and sadness and depression, like, aren't as bad for them as they are for us. Like, in fact, they connect to it, right? That's why women enjoy watching sad movies together. Like, they want to be sad together. Which I think for a male, that's hard for us to fathom. It's like, why would you ever want to be sad, right? Like, just be happy all the time. But it's different. It's a totally different creature.
Pardon, what did you say at the end?
Oh, I just said we're different creatures. I think we're very different creatures when it comes to emotionality.
Absolutely. We have different brains, different amygdala sizes. But yeah, I really like you naming that. And just because you have your own sadness you're not going to be stuck in there forever. You move through things, right? You feel things to move through. So it's an excellent point. Like, we could be mad and sad and joyful within 3 minutes.
Okay.
All of it.
Right.
And then dancing around the kitchen.
Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah, and then that's what makes the feminine attractive and beautiful, I think, to the masculine, because we don't have that. And I know you keep harping on it not being forever. And I think that's really important, because I think as men, at least I felt this, my clients have felt this, like, the fear is, if I go into this with her, it's never going to end.
I know. And I try to do my best as a couples therapist to say, like, yes, you can join her and still feel safe and still feel your joy. Yeah, it's not going to ruin your joy. You just join for a little bit, and then you can go back to, your joy and your garage and all your sports. We're not taking that away from you. But don't take our intensity and our feelings away from us.
Right. Yeah, that's what makes you feminine, right? I mean, that's like the beating heart, right? And I think for guys, it's really important to just validate and try to lean into the emotion, like what you're saying, and not get caught in the content. Because again, as men, we get focused on the content, we get focused on the story, and we want to like nitpick the details, or we want to look at hypocrisies or inaccuracies, because that's how our brain works. We're very like dissecting in the way. But it's important to, I guess, for the guys out there, because I had to learn this, of like, often when your female partner is communicating with you, it's an emotional communication. It's not literal. It's an expression of emotion. It's more like an art form and less like a technical manual, right? But I think as guys, we get caught in those little micro details, and then that also invalidates the partner, because we're just like critiquing stuff that's actually not important to the story, you know?
Great. Yeah. And I'm sure you would agree with this. You know, we're talking about the type 4 BPD style. Many other women, many other men, many other women do it super cognitively. Many other men are super like masculine, maybe too masculine, you know. So yeah, but we're talking about this particular psychic structure and those who are attracted.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think masculine and feminine are energies, and it's not attached to sex, right? Birth sex. Although there tend to be more feminine women and tend to be more masculine men, right? I mean, I think they group bimodally like that. Yeah. So let's keep going down our timeline, right? So you talked about where the masks come off, and then the anger and resentment starts to build, right? And, you know, let's just say for this imaginary couple, they've not gone to therapy. They haven't done anything about it. The man is avoiding, you know, the woman is building resentment. When does it get really bad? You know, when does it kind of switch over into that kind of bad object, adversarial type of relationship?
Yeah. So it kind of surprises me. I get a lot of the couples. So I hear the stories through my clients, the female client. But then I get a lot of the couples that are in my office after 10 to 20 years. I don't know how they made it through, you know, but I think also to name, sometimes women need to feel really safe in order to let their mask down. So maybe they don't let their mask down for a while, or the guy will think like, oh, you know, this will change. Like if I can just, you know, bear with this, or, you know, kind of go through the pregnancy or go through her career change. I've seen a lot of that. Like, she's just dramatic because she found out this about her past, or she's so let down by that job, or she's having her second kid. And so I'm seeing couples, just to jump you a bit, 10 to 20 to 30 years down the road, when the guy is kind of sheepishly walks in, cowers with his shoulders kind of curled over, and then the woman is just like, I am freaking leaving this person. So I think a lot of times it gets to a point the man will endure. He'll endure. If he hasn't already split from the get-go, he'll endure. He'll have all kinds of excuses for her. And then typically she brings him in, and she is at the point of divorce, and he will do anything. He will then go see a therapist. He'll go see a somatic therapist. He'll go see a medicine guide. He will cry in session. And we're talking 20 years time. And then she's revisiting all the times that he bought the Ferrari, or that he was in the garage, or that he took off on a surfing trip. So I would say there's kind of a window. Either the guy splits right at the get-go, or he stays in until the end. He will stay until the end, or have an affair. Sorry, men, but you know, that's what also happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes she'll have an affair, and then it gets really complicated. And then we've got kids and houses and cars and boats and, you know, cottages and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
I really feel my heart breaking open for both sides right now.
But
Yeah, and then the guys who split too early, I have to pick up those pieces too from the woman. Like, but she had one bad night. She drank a little too much. She said some things. The guy's gone. He's gone. He's back on the app or back out there. So he doesn't even really know who she is. He doesn't know.
It's really tricky. It is such like a tricky art form, right? Because, yeah, I think my bias, right, as a therapist, I'm like, okay, if somebody crosses a boundary, like, get out of there, right? Especially if it's something that is abusive or hurtful or traumatizing. And yet, I think what you're saying is important too, of like making room for imperfection, because people are going to have bad nights, so we're going to say stuff. But I think it's important that a foundation is there so that it can tolerate those ups and downs, you know, or those dry spells in the relationship, or those times where you're disconnected, you're kind of ships in the night. I think that's also really common. But yeah, I mean, to the first point, the guys that fall, they usually call me, right? They call us at Men's Therapy Online. And obviously, I'm curious if you've seen this, where they do their own work, and they do call it 2 or 3 years of therapy, and then they divorce the wife. I've seen that so many times, where like they get healthier, they see it clearly, and then they leave.
I know. And Mark, I refer people to you and your team. I don't get to see that because they leave couples. They go do their own work, and I don't get to see the end of the story. I've never had a couple, I'm trying to think, break up in my room. So yeah, so I don't get to hear, I hear those stories because I'm usually dating the person who had the BPD-X. Do you know how many people? 90% of the guy that I'm dating off the app has had a BPD-X. You know, so it's just crazy. But I'm so glad to hear that they go on. And then they're the ones that, get some boundaries and they get firm in their no. And a lot of time the woman is so irate and so done and so disappointed that she may not come back. But I get to see a lot of the couples, at least from what I know, that are working it. They're still in it.
Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you wanted to open up, but you were afraid that it wouldn't be taken well? You ask yourself, what's the point? Nothing's going to change anyway. So you do what you always do. You push it down, numb out the pain with a drink, a night out, or pornography. I've been there myself, and I know that men lack the outlets for emotional expression, which is why I founded Men's Therapy Online, a healing hub for men's mental health. If you've been knocked on your ass or just crave meaningful connection, join Men's Therapy Online, a community of men who just get it. We offer individual therapy, men's groups, and powerful retreats, all led by licensed therapists. At Men's Therapy Online, we will help you to get back on your feet and take your life to the next level. Start your journey today at menstherapy.online.
Yeah, say more about that. Like, what are some changes that need to happen in order to accommodate both sides of this dynamic, right? Because I think that's another question that we get a lot, and I'm sure you get it all the time as a couples counselor, is like, is it workable? Like, is there even any hope here? Or is it better just to like file for a divorce and try again?
Yeah. Ooh. So 2 kinds of couples. So I've had, the woman or the time where I actually really raised my voice with the woman. I mean, she was so condescending and so mean. I heard they broke up. But then I'm picturing another couple. I hope I don't give too many details, but wow. I think 20 years. And he went and saw a man that I referred him to. They started doing the work. I was allowed to talk to the male therapist. So helped the male therapist understand this alleged BPD style personality so that they don't get co-opted. And then to talk to the female about, and I did split the couple, so I saw them individually for a few times. I got to hear from the woman how the man really did rescue her and how that she really has so much respect for him and that she now can sit in herself, that she now can regulate herself. And so I haven't seen this couple that I was working with. I think the summer was the last time. And I bet they're doing just fine because somehow we were able to turn them both towards each other. And he was able to say, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And she was finally able to say, I'm glad you're here. And I don't want to go anywhere. And it was just like, oh. And we're talking, these people had all kinds of money, all kinds of privilege, all kinds of everything. And it's their time to thrive. They've both worked really, really hard. They both had kids. They've both been in careers. Now they get to enjoy their, multiple houses and their trips. Now's the time. And I'll probably check back in with them, at some point. But I think that's a case where I feel really good about it. And I was also able to say something to the man, in session with her watching. Thank you. Thank you for all you do. Mm-hmm. Thank you. And let's help you understand her. And so I'd lean into her and say, do you feel met? Do you feel that I hear you? And then he was able to kind of mimic me. Yeah, I missed that couple.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's good to see you get so excited about the work and about a success story. And I guess I have this question, I have a couple questions, but one I want to ask directly, I think I know your answer, but I want to ask directly is
yeah.
Do you think that both people have to do work? Because that's what I'm hearing, and that right, yeah. So I think talk to that, because I see it to be one-sided so many times, and I think that always fails, right? When one person gets, raises their EQ, and the other person isn't matching that, I think that's 100% chance of relationship failure. I've seen it almost every single time.
Yeah, and so I'm picturing another woman who brought in a man who I sent to one of my colleagues. He was willing to do anything. She wasn't doing her work. Extremely arrogant, extremely pompous, emotions out of control. She was done. She wasn't doing her work. So yes, both people need to do the work. And for that woman, in this case, who's the BPD, find a therapist that freaking gets you. I'm remembering one of my therapists who wasn't my type, and she said, why do you do things like that? It's like, excuse me?
Yeah.
Females, BPDs, borderline force, find a therapist that gets you. And actually, maybe even find a frickin' 4. Men, find a man who gets you. And who gets the woman who's next to you. Read some books. There's plenty of books out there for this kind of structure. Get close to it. Develop your masculinity, like you were saying.
Are there any books you'd recommend? I know yours, which will be in the show notes, but I'm wondering if there's any others that we can throw down there for people to do some research on.
Gosh, there's so many, but Walking on Eggshells is, as sort of the paramount. Love Me, Don't Leave Me is another big one. And then I did a documentary, Border_line. And Healing from BPD, which is one of the women in my documentary, runs 4,000 women are on this site. There's courses for these people. DBT, Marsha Linehan, who came out with bipolar and BPD, that she had it. She runs groups, DBT groups. There's DBT groups, everywhere. Dialectical behavioral therapy. And then, people like you to deal with the men. Get these men with other men. They're not alone. I can't believe how many of these men have no friends.
Yeah.
You're freaking alone. Alone.
Deeply alone. I think especially in this relationship, in this dynamic, because what I see, especially for the for the older crowd, actually, for like boomers and Gen Xers, where it's like they're forbidden from having any female friends, like zero other female friends. And then often little to no male friends. Like maybe they have college buddies that they see once a year, every other year for like a golfing trip or something, right? But like zero relationship with other women, which I think it's a mind fuck, because how can you know what's going on in your relationship if you don't talk to other women, right? There's no other points of comparison, you know?
Totally. As a matter of fact, I can't really think of a book right now. I can think of a lot of books about, dating narcissistic men. I can't think of a book for men about, that could be my next book. Men dating this type of personality. I can't think of one. Can you?
No, you should write that book. Yeah. You should write that book specifically for that. Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So and podcasts like this can help. Men's groups, as I just said, hugely important. And I was dropped by man's who's a therapist girlfriend because I was his friend. Don't drop. Stand up for your good female friends, men. Tell your lady, no, she's my friend. We're not sleeping together. We will not be sleeping together. She's my friend. She's helping us.
Yeah, 100%.
You'll like her. She's not a threat. So I've been dropped by many, many men.
I think that happens. I think that's I think that's the American thing of like, you just lock down the nuclear family and you lose all friends. And it just creates like madness, because there's no points of reference. There's no reality testing. There's nothing. It's just like a little echo chamber. And I think that's when things get really weird. And I think people think that it's normal.
It gets really, and Esther Perel will tell us, one person can't do everything. We're in this modern age where we think one person is everything on both sides. Yeah. Well, they're not. And don't make them be. Jeez.
Yeah, and a book that talks about that, just for listeners, is mating in captivity. I'll also put that in the show notes. It's what Dr. Sattler's referencing. Esther Perel is the best. If you haven't, heard her, listeners. Yeah. So can we all come to these relationships a little more full, a little more healed? So it takes a team. Yeah. Well, so let me ask you this. We've talked a lot about this toxic relationship pattern, but in your opinion, what is a healthy relationship, or what is a, evolved modern relationship? Well, what are we aiming for here?
Yeah. Well, I haven't had many, just to let you know. I'm hopeful. So I think, can both people be as developed as they possibly can? I went through my own healing in the last couple years where I really got embodied and really have more of my health. But I think I know very few couples that are doing this relationship thing really well. But the ones that I do know, they're both pretty darn healthy. And they both have their own careers and friends and family and passion. So can two whole people come together, or two working on being whole, and not put all of their projection on one person? And also, can we also give a little space in the beginning? You don't know how many times people sleep with each other the first night. How does a container hold all of that? Right? Can you give it a little space? Can you give it a little time? Why are we all so frantically urgent to find our person, even when we, biologically don't need a person?
Yeah, I think that I just want to highlight that we had Brie Walter. I think she was on the show a couple of weeks ago, and she was talking about making room for ambivalence in dating, right? Just being like, look, I don't know you. We've only had coffee 2 times. Like, I literally don't know you. I can't know you. And allowing it to go a lot slower, because everything is like, just like you're saying, is really, really fast. Fast towards sex, fast towards, commitment, fast towards moving in. Like, everything is really fast. And I think men and women want that, like, yes or no, like after date 2 or 3. And it's like, how can you do that? You don't know that person. You've hung out with them for like maybe 4 hours,
I know. Yeah, I love that. So that's I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that podcast. Yeah, so it's a projection fest until the honeymoon's over. So, just go slow and keep dating other people. And it's not the be all end all. It's part of, it's a very important decision, but it's part of the pie. You'll know when you know. And I've also had I've had individuals who have gotten married in our work. I'm thinking of a psychologist right now, and it's just so beautiful. Like, she was healing. She met a guy online. He was working with the therapist, and they're getting married. They were doing the work. And, we had a couple wild nights, from, her standpoint. And then you get to hear, that they're getting married. And then what about their kids? I mean, today, as you know, is an important day. It's our election day. What about our culture? What about our kids? Not just me, not just us, the partnership. What about all of us? What about the neighbors? What about our colleagues? Can we do our healing for everyone, please?
Yeah, I think that's really well said. I want to ask you kind of on that topic, a little bit of a curveball, but I know, when you're not doing this, you also talk a lot about, mental health accessibility and leveraging tech platforms and really getting like the message out to way more people. And so when I look at the younger generation, right, Gen Z, the upcoming Gen Alpha, they have access to so much more mental health education, like through things like this podcast or even TikTok and Instagram and books. Like it's everywhere. So I guess my question for you is like, what are they going to be like? Right? Because I think we talk about people that are stuck for 20 years. I see it as just kind of like low EQ, not because they're stupid, but because it wasn't that much education for boomers and Gen Xers. Like truly there wasn't. But now it's like, it's everywhere. So I'm curious what you see in the future of relationships and all this kind of stuff.
So I'm not sure, but in being on a call with a young, vibrant woman last night, she has finally decided that she's bi, confirmed. She kissed a woman. She's also highly confused with all the choices of men. She's open. She's doing her work. But right now, as I sat with her last night, there was a lot of, I don't know. What do you think? I don't know. What do you think? So my hope is they're coming into therapy a lot earlier because it's just so accessible. There's no stigma. So I hope that they'll be more developed and they'll make whatever choice is best for them. And I don't think they need to do anything. Some of them don't need to work. They don't need to be a corporate, lifelonger. They don't need to have 2 kids. They don't need to have the picket fence. They don't need to be monogamous. My hope is a more sane world if they do their work. It's okay to have a million possibilities, but hopefully you can settle into one that works for you, right?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Like, I think the younger generation will be way more educated and way more picky. But my fear is what you just said, is that they actually won't just settle down and they won't accept imperfection because they do have so much education. And in some ways, they're a little bit too educated and they might be expecting everything to be perfect. Whereas I think like, with someone who is in a longer term relationship, married now, it's like there's tons of times where it's just not much going on. But that's stable. I mean, that's like stability can feel boring and it can feel like not that stimulating versus, a toxic relationship or a BPD relationship that's like always stimulating, but very unstable,
Yeah. I'm hopeful for the Gen Zs. They're so vibrant and creative, and they bring so much to their coupledom. It's like, wow, that like a themed party or making costumes or making props. It's like, or going climbing on the weekends. So they bring not just themselves, but their culture. So I'm hopeful. I really am.
Yeah, I love my Gen Z clients. I have a handful of them, and they're just like, they're so smart and they're so like intelligent, and they're like willing to have these emotional conversations. The word vibes, right? Like that's from their generation, and it's just a way to start to talk about the emotional tone in a room. As a millennial, we didn't talk about that shit at all. I think we were more emotional than our parents, of course, but like we weren't like openly talking about the vibes in the room. Oh yeah.
Heck no. No, I was too busy performing. We were too busy being paper dolls or whatever someone wanted us to be. Yeah. That's a great question. Yeah, I'm going to pay close attention. Yeah, they got a lot of heat, but I also think they're really open. They have different consciousness, different level of accessibility. And our world depends on them. It really does.
Yeah, and I think they're really authentic. At least the ones that, come to therapy, I guess the ones that I talk to, mostly, but they seem like just really authentic and not as guarded. And it's probably because of being young, but I think also the content, the media, all the new media stuff, Instagram, YouTube, it's fake, but it's less fake than like TV and cable, so they're getting like a lot more authentic content and education than I think any generation has ever gotten.
Yeah, and they will quote things from TikTok, Twitter now X. They'll quote and they'll run it past me. What do you think about this? I'm following this woman. Yeah.
Well, Tamra, it was wonderful to have you on the show. I can't wait for our next episode. I hope you write that new book, and I'll certainly have you on probably later on this year again as well as a returning expert. But as we're wrapping up this episode here, where can people learn more about you and find you online?
Yeah, so tamrasattler.com, TamraSattler.com. And honestly, if you need referrals, I'll do the work. I'll search, different cities, states. Obviously, I know the people in Boulder and Denver. But let's get these couples help. I'll refer to you, your team. I have a few slots. Yeah, and Too Much Not Enough is at Amazon if you want, a really good read on this particular personality structure. If, a family member, if you're struggling, I'm open. I'm open to whatever, inquiries come in.
Yeah, and I think, listeners, really take her at face value there. I've known Tamra for years, and she is, amazing therapist and couples counselor. And just like she said, she's a wonderful source for referrals, for connection. She's really well networked, and she is being honest when she said that she will find you the help that you need to help you have the best relationship possible. So Dr. Sattler, thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you. So great to see you, Marc. Hope to see you soon.
Likewise. And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this, please do all the social stuff, like, share, subscribe, send it to somebody. If there's someone that you know that is a type 4 or has borderline style or is dating somebody, send this episode over to them. Share the news. We're trying to make this as accessible as possible. I know it's passionate for both me and Tamra to get this information out from trusted sources, licensed sources out there so people can really make educated decisions about their mental health and their lifestyle. So check all that stuff out. Also subscribe to us on all the social media. We're at Men's Therapy Online everywhere. That's the brand that runs this podcast. And we also have a YouTube channel. So if you want to see what we look like and you want to see a video version, we have that on our YouTube channel, again, under Men's Therapy Online. So check all that stuff up, and we'll see you next week, another episode of the Men's Therapy Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. And don't forget to visit menstherapy.online to learn more about the work that we are doing to support and inspire men. Until next time, keep moving forward.